Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery. Look, these guys are located in historic Columbia Tusculum neighborhood on the east side of Cincinnati, and Streetside is really the perfect mix of just local neighborhood watering hole and a modern craft beer brewery. They have 24 beers on tap, and I promise you, you will not find a bad one amongst them. These guys were great when they had us out for the live show for the CONCACAF Champions Cup kickoff to start FC Cincinnati season, and they do events all throughout the year. They do a pint night on Tuesday nights. They do Premier League mornings. Tons of really fun events there. But a special note to Postcast listeners, if you mention the Cincy Postcast at the bar when you're getting your beer, they will take $1 off of your beer, and you let them know that we sent you their way. You can find them at 4003 Eastern Avenue or in the fridge of wherever you're picking up your next beer. Again, a huge thank you to Streetside Brewery for sponsoring the Postcast. And on today's show, boy, do we have a full episode for you. We started off with, of course, the breaking news that came out Sunday morning. DeAndre Yedlin headed to FC Cincinnati, U.S. men's national team player, former Inter Miami player, on his way to Cincinnati to fill that right wingback spot. Wow. Who would have thought a name like this would be showing up? That is also followed by part two. We talk about an FC Cincinnati win over the weekend, a 2-1 victory in Chicago on the road. FC Cincinnati taking 4 points out of a possible 6. Not a bad start to the season. We wrap it all up in part 3 with a couple of topics about MLS generally that has sort of caught our interest. We tie it all up with a bow and we present it to you, and that'll be your postcast. And joining me to talk about all of that and more are two gentlemen who also found out about the breaking news on a Sunday morning, joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. I got to tell you both, I was almost that meme of fall to my knees in a Walmart upon reading the news. I did get a text message at the checkout line of Kroger that was just Yedlin ? And I was like, no way. I haven't been checking Twitter for like an hour. There's no way this just happened. And then it happened.
All I can say is wherever you are out there, Pat Brennan, thank you so much for breaking a story finally where we can talk about it the day we record, as opposed to the news dropping on a Monday morning and all of a sudden the content we released is woefully out of date. Really doing a solid for your boys at the Postcast here. So thank you so much for doing that and giving us DeAndre Yedlin to FCC to lead off a podcast. When was the last time we had an actual game recap on a Monday get bumped to page 2 for team news? I don't think it's ever happened.
I'm going to say never happened. Games and wins are usually the first story here. Also, shout out to Pat for beating Tom Bogert. It feels like it was a very narrow race there on that one.
And even Fabrizio gave him credit in his tweet, which, getting mentioned by Fabrizio, I think runs 2,000, 10,000 euros these days. So that's what we call in the biz earned media right there.
Grayson, where were you when you heard the news? And feel free to lie about this.
I was in the Cincinnati Nature Center.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's lovely.
we had literally just parked, and I was waiting for some of our group to finish using the restroom, pulled open my phone and saw Pat Brennan's tweet. I think it was like 5-6 minutes old at that point in time. And then I spent probably the next 30 minutes of the hike just like looking at my phone.
Like beautiful, being present in nature. This is truly, what getting back to our roots is I scroll Twitter to find out what all the takes are and find out what the terms are.
My wife at one point said that I looked like a 12-year-old who had gotten lost in the woods.
Oh, that is so good.
Into the Woods, not a Broadway World reference, shockingly.
Somehow. So we are now the recipient of a gently used DeAndre Yedlin. Chief, you've been harping on this one for a while. You said the right back position was reason for concern going into the season, maybe even holding him back from a trophy. And now we have just signed 30-year-old DeAndre Yedlin from Inter Miami for what looks like less than $200,000 in GAM. How does this change your outlook on the season?
It's interesting. Yes, this team desperately needed a right back. It desperately needs any kind of wing back depth right now. And you had to figure that, or we all figured, I think, going into this year, that there would be some kind of a trade this team would make in league to replace one of the players it was losing. Now, the reason we all thought that was because we all assumed that when Barreal got sold, we'd get a big GAM infusion, which we could then use as a trade asset in league. It turns out the only GAM infusion we needed to make this trade was selling an international roster spot last week. But it's an interesting target. It feels, am I wrong about this? It feels like people have been trying to manifest DeAndre Yedlin to FC Cincinnati for quite some time.
He made a lot of sense. Yeah.
I get that it's also because it's a name that most people recognize because of his time with the U.S. men's national team. He was, I think, the first MLS homegrown to go to the Premier League when he went from Seattle to Tottenham after that incredible showing in the 2014 World Cup. I like Albright going out there and getting a guy who is familiar with the league, who is very reliable, starts a lot of games, plays a lot of minutes, speed, which this team could use a little more of, I think. Where my worries are, if I have worries, I don't love the contract number he's on. I think the contract number that he's on is a bit of an overpay for FC Cincinnati. I would not have signed DeAndre Yedlin to that contract number that he's on. And there's no getting around it. He's on the backside of his career. I think the best years of DeAndre Yedlin's career are behind him. He a little inconsistent from time to time with his touch. I went back and looked up all of his player rating numbers on FOTMob, which is always a great way to understand how good a player is. He scores out at about a 6.8 average type MLS player. He's not blowing the doors off anybody, but he fits a need. He's available now, and by all accounts, he can come in and play immediately. He's not even cup tied in CONCACAF Champions Cup, which theoretically means he could play as soon as Thursday against Monterrey, depending on when this deal gets done.
I was I was a proponent of and full disclosure, I pulled out, for the purposes of recording this podcast, my 2016 U.S. men's national team DeAndre Yedlin.
Not my favorite jersey. Not my favorite U.S. men's national team kit design, to be fair.
But so if you were in line to vote in Hamilton County in 2016, and somebody in the U.S. men's national team jersey handed you an Aftab Puraval for Clerk of Courts flyer, that was me.
Look what you've done now.
This is
all your fault. This is all your fault.
It was all me.
Yeah, like there's now like it's the domino meme. It's little domino, Grayson in a Yedlin jersey handing you a flyer, big domino, Travis Kelce calling Cincinnati's marriage jabroni on national
and
TV.
FC Cincinnati signing DeAndre Yedlin.
We'll see how it plays out.
I was a proponent of I really wanted us to make a run at Julian Gressel in the offseason, although it seemed like that his trajectory was always to Miami.
Yeah.
That's, I think, more of like a me thing, probably. I think he would have been really nice on this team, especially before we lost Vasquez, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think Yedlin does profile into how they use wingbacks better than Gressel would, for a lot of the reasons that Chief already described. You got another veteran. He's been a team captain for Miami, which means that we've got a lot of captains on the team right now, which I don't think you know, Miazga, Robinson, Yedlin, Lucho, you know, you got a lot of like captain type characters on the team, which I think is, you can't like underestimate the value of that. And, you know, you talk about his salary number. He's coming in at just under like $700,000 for us per reporting. Because Miami's responsible for a chunk of his salary, which is what they're using that GAM for, which is,
that doesn't make sense to me.
Books.
If that's the case, why don't we just keep the GAM and pay it down ourselves?
Because they were stuck with that portion of his salary regardless, because he was on their roster for part of the year. So they you can't trade somebody's like budget like hit.
Oh,
you can only trade GAM.
That makes sense then.
Yeah. I had to think about it for a second too, because it's like intuitively like a little weird.
Right.
Yeah.
But and the other thought I had was like, well, why did they turn down? I thought like, well, this must be like a last ditch option, because if you're going to get DeAndre Yedlin on, you know, his salary, why wouldn't you just pick up Santiago Arias's option?
Right.
And I still think that I still kind of have that question a little bit, and I hope that we get a kind of satisfying answer to it at some point. But I was curious, and I looked up a stat, and you know, last year Yedlin started 36 games in all comps for Miami, and they didn't make the playoffs, so he didn't have like the playoffs to add to that. So that's between MLS, Leagues Cup, and Open Cup. Arias started 21 in all competitions for us, and that includes him starting 2 out of the 4 games in the playoffs. And he did not play at all in the other 2. And so I do think there is some value in having somebody who has demonstrated consistent availability to basically be an everyday starter at that spot, except for like normal rotation. Most of Yedlin's games he didn't start last year were when he was out for the Gold Cup.
Right.
And then he had a yellow card accumulation, and then he had like a couple of games that he came off the bench that looked like it was just like regular rotation.
Yeah.
I think there is value to that. I don't know that that value brings Yedlin up to the same number that I would want Santiago Arias on. But since we don't know exactly what everybody else's hit is, we don't know how much GAM the team has, it's very hard for me to like look at Yedlin's salary number and say like, this is a problem.
Number one ability is availability.
Number one ability is availability. And the other thing is just like, Albright knows a lot more about the team's budget situation than I do. So I assume that he's not like destroying our budget by bringing in DeAndre Yedlin. And again, like I am looking forward to having hopefully like a more detailed analysis of like what the calculus is between we're going to turn down Arias's option and try to renegotiate him. And if we don't, and if we don't get him in on like a lower number than his option year, this is another good solution to the right wing back spot. Like I would like some visibility into the thought process, just because I think it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah,
you know,
I think the
Bogert reported that Yedlin was like our number one option. I think that's puffery.
Maybe. I think
maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, like, there's a lot of moving parts to all this, which is like, I think part of the problem. Like, I'm with you. My first thought was, if you're going to pay DeAndre Yedlin this much of your budget, why didn't you just re-sign Santiago Arias? Well, you got to remember too that this budget slot is available because Alvaro Barreal got loaned, in large part. Right. They still got room to make a couple other additions theoretically, but like he's taking Alvaro's salary slot right here. That loan didn't materialize, and that move didn't materialize until really late. Mm-hmm. Really, really late. They brought in Luca Oriano first because they needed to replace Barreal on the field. Mm-hmm. But in terms of Barrial's salary slot, they had to wait until he was gone in order to do that. It very well may be the case that they wanted to bring Arias back. They told Arias, we want to bring you back, but it just took too long to get to the point where they had the salary room to bring in Oriano, which was the biggest priority, because Arias can't be a Barreal replacement. They needed someone that could go over there and lock down the left wing back spot. And that by the time everything got signed and sealed with Barreal, Arias was like, you know what? I had a great time in Cincinnati, but y'all aren't worth waiting for. I've got this other offer over here that I'm going to take. I got to sign up and get going somewhere. That's a potential explanation. I don't know if that's true. It's spitballing. But the fact is that all these moves were contingent on one another to a certain extent. And the Barreal situation kept this team in limbo. And that was the one thing we were looking out for at the start of the year, was how long was it going to take to get these pieces moved that would free up the salary spots. So based on that, maybe it was the case that, okay, Yedlin is our number one priority, and then we have to wait until Miami gets to a point where they figure out what their roster compliance situation is, and maybe the GAM need to get Yedlin from them is dropping as they don't find suitors, or as Yedlin doesn't agree to a move anywhere else. Because I think Yedlin probably has to sign off on a move like this, just because of the profile of player that he is. I don't think it would be a great look if they were doing this without his consent.
Yeah, legally they don't need his consent, but yeah, you want to do your due diligence here.
I think from a roster personnel management standpoint, I don't think that you pull this move, because he was under contract with Miami through next year.
Yeah.
Yes. And so unlike international transfers, trades within MLS, you just take the player's contract. The contract's with the league.
I agree that they can do it. I just don't think that they do that for U.S. men's national team players of like Yedlin's stature.
I agree. I don't think that they pull this move unless they feel like Yedlin is fully signed off on it. Which could include, talking to Robinson, talking to Miazga, like his, U.S. national team buddies. Maybe doing a visit. We have not seen
the lights
all for DeAndre or whatever they do. But
Yedlin is all for Cincy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm happy they made the move. I think it's interesting how much U.S. men's national team talent this team is collecting. I think that's very, very interesting to me.
And this is basically a free.
Yes.
Like the amount of GAM they traded to Miami is, by the reporting, just proportionally the portion of salary that they would have owed him if they had just signed him as a free agent,
right,
at the salary he made at Miami last year,
which is insane. Like any other place in the world, this would be a $2 to $5 million transfer. The whole concept is very funny.
But so I think it's I think it's a move that is a consequence of Miami's roster situation, needing to be compliant. I have some tinfoil hat theories about the timing and all that, but I'm not going to go into that right now.
I absolutely will. I think that the fact of the matter is that that this was a handshake deal before roster compliance date. They were waiting to finalize Barrial's move out, and that Miami was not roster compliant until this deal actually went through. And I think MLS gave him a hand wave on him.
Yeah, that's my tinfoil hat theory.
That's my absolute. I'll say it out loud. I think that's my real theory. I ain't going to put some fucking foil on for that one.
So I think that it's a situation where like Albright got a great player in this league for free.
Yeah.
And he got it by virtue of, one, not letting himself get drawn in to force a move at Miami's price. And two, creating a situation that FC Cincinnati, defying all expectations, right? And we said this with the Miles Robinson deal, has become a destination team in Major League Soccer.
For
and
Americans.
It's a situation certainly for Americans. And it's a team where, they were probably uniquely set up to be a team that, one, had the room and the need for Yedlin, and two, was a team that he was happy to move to. Yeah. And we're gonna get more information about this. He's gonna get the chance to, at some point probably like share his own reasons. And so there's a lot of obviously speculation behind that. But like, I think it's informed speculation just based on the circumstances and the facts that are known surrounding it.
It's interesting too that like he has been pretty clear that like he had certain destinations in mind for where he wanted to play.
Yeah, you can't find this anymore. I looked for it, but a couple of years ago he went on. Jermaine Jones like had a very short-lived podcast that was a great listen, and it
was so good.
I believe it's been scrubbed from YouTube because he said some real tough things about. Somebody actually resurfaced a video of it. No, that was actually an interview he gave, because he did talk about like Jordan Morris on his own podcast and the dog and all this stuff.
He ripped it.
Yeah, I think he probably scrubbed it because he's trying to like maintain like his career within like American soccer, and stuff was said. But Yedlin went on his podcast, and this is before he moved to Miami, and said basically like he would go to LA or Miami.
Yeah.
He wanted to go.
And he's given interviews before to ESPN. There was a great profile that ESPN did of him prior to him moving to Miami when he was still with Galatasaray over in Turkey. And if you look this up, it is phenomenal. Just a phenomenal read about who DeAndre Yedlin is. If all you know about him is just like what you've seen on television, he is and I don't say this lightly, he's a profoundly interesting individual in terms of his worldviews, his background, how he was raised. Just interesting. Go give it a look. But he also said, like, I want to end my career in Seattle. I want to move back to Seattle at some point, too. So the idea that, like, all of a sudden he's okay making a move from to Cincinnati, I think that the big takeaway that you should have about this is, number one, you're getting a player that isn't the DeAndre Yedlin you remember if you don't watch a lot of Inter Miami games, and your memory of him is what he's done with the U.S. men's national team, but who is still a very good, very effective player. And the other takeaway you should have is that, again, this is FC Cincinnati going out there and planting their flag, and a major American talent has signed on to play at FC Cincinnati. And I don't think you can't call it a coincidence at this point that this team lured Matt Miazga back to America to play when he could have said no. Even though Cincinnati had the allocation list right there, he could have stayed in Europe. There would have been people that would have taken him in Europe. He came back to America knowing full well he had to go to Cincinnati. He could have forced Cincinnati to coming back could have forced Cincinnati to sell that spot to someone else. The league could have figured out a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
Matt Miazga came back to Cincinnati. Miles Robinson chose Cincinnati. We've talked about it in the past. And here's DeAndre Yedlin signing off on a move to Cincinnati. You can't call it a coincidence at this point. This is a team, this is a city and an organization that is very clearly well thought of in the American soccer game, with facilities these players are familiar with from having trained and played matches here, a coaching staff that understands the American player, that have been U.S. men's national team players themselves. This is if you're an FC Cincinnati fan, this is a feather in the hat of your organization, your club, like we all are, that the American soccer players want to come here to play.
Yeah, Grayson, you're more tapped into the national team stuff than I think either of us. I'm curious what your thought is on this. I think there's an argument for taking essentially the entire FC Cincinnati defense with whatever national team call-up there is, even if they're all the second choice, because of the familiarity. Like the fact that you would have 3 center backs and a fullback and a goalkeeper all playing for one team that could all realistically be called into any of the camps, any of the competitions, that seems so insanely valuable. I can't think of a time in U.S. soccer history where we've ever had anything like this.
Yeah, I can't either.
Wait, I can. There was the one time in the 80s where they put Team USA in the NASL.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. You talk about like, one of the things we've talked about on the podcast is like relationships. Mm-hmm. And, the relationships that folks like Albright and Noonan and the coaching staff bring with them. So DeAndre Yedlin's agent is Kenny Arena's agent. A guy named Chris Megalautis. Chris Megalautis' mom was Bruce Arena's assistant, I believe, with the U.S. men's national team. And she's also married to Tom. I think she still is. Married to Thomas Rongen, who was played by Michael Fassbender in Next Goal Wins. And her character is played by Elizabeth Moss, although they weren't actually, I believe, divorced in real life. I think that was just an element they threw in to that movie. So, I think that plays a factor as well in making stuff like this happen, which is why
Elizabeth Moss.
Elizabeth Moss.
Made this happen. Yes,
The Handmaid's Tale made this happen. When Jeff Cameron came to FC Cincinnati, I was like blown away,
starstruck.
Right? Like I was like, oh my god, Jeff Cameron is playing for FC
Coffee Emporium in Hyde Park, and I was like, ooh. That's Jeff Cameron.
DeAndre Yedlin's another player in this category for me.
Yeah.
He's another player that's like, I am going to be so pumped when he plays his first game for us. At least certainly the first one that I get to attend. And then Kevin, you mentioned he played for Galatasaray. I gotta say this. You guys know the song Fat Bottom Girls? That by Queen?
Yeah.
You know that part where he says, get on your bikes and ride? Get on your bikes and ride. That's how I always say Galatasaray in my head. Galatasaray! I can't not do it.
The story I was referencing where he was playing over there was talking about just how absurd living in Istanbul is, especially under Erdogan's government. But the fact that Galatasaray is the unofficial club of the entire country of Turkey and the city of Istanbul, and saying he couldn't go out to dinner on nights that they had lost games because everyone is so recognizable and everyone just loses their mind when Galatasaray loses. So he would have to DoorDash, the equivalent of DoorDash in food, because I'm not leaving and going out or showing my face after a loss.
Wow.
So DeAndre, if you're listening, it's cool. You can go out to dinner in Cincinnati after losses. We went through a lot of them for a few years. We're just happy to have you here. There are plenty of
you can go to Pep as often as you want.
Right. Melt is vegan friendly. I'm told he's vegan, so go.
Oh, he's vegan?
I heard that. Word on the street.
Well, there's tons of great options.
Yeah. Green Dog Sullivan.
A great option is Amma's Kitchen in Roselawn. It's a vegan Indian
That's
restaurant.
right. It's very
delicious.
good. It's very good.
It's delicious.
So I like this move. I think I don't know how you can not like. I don't know how you can not like this move. And you're right about Yedlin too. Like if you're of a certain age, his game in 2014 against Belgium is kind of like a seminal moment for like being a men's soccer team fan, where he just absolutely was cooking that entire game. And overnight he was this guy's going to Europe immediately just for how he showed out against that team that had, Eden Hazard. I think Lukaku was on that team.
Yeah.
But that
team was so good.
Was
that 2014 Belgium team was basically a Premier League all-star team. It was insane.
So I mean that's, and he was kind of an early flag bearer for what MLS wanted to be and what Americans could be coming through MLS. He, like I said, he was the first one that went from the academy program over to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's going to be cool. This is going to be a lot of fun watching him play. He's an instant upgrade. He's familiar with the league. He should be plug and play. There is none of that, like with Pavel or Luka of adjusting to a new culture. It's have boots, will travel, come up here and score goals, assist goals, be a pest and a menace down the right-hand side of the field, cook some guys with your speed. I just think this is cool. And any concerns that I have otherwise about age, money, whether his best soccer is in the rearview mirror or in the windshield, I don't care. It's DeAndre Yedlin. This is cool. And if you're not fired up about this to some extent, I don't know what you're watching soccer for. Especially I don't know what you're watching MLS for. Yeah. It's good shit.
I guess the only downside here is it's yet another player that's going to be missing during international breaks. Maybe. Potentially. Yeah.
I don't care about that this year.
Yeah.
I don't care about it. I just want a cup team.
Yeah.
That's all I care about this year.
Now I am really invested in Greg Berhalter remaining coach of the national team because I think he hates a few of these guys. So
that's a good point.
The minute we get a better manager, maybe Ian Murphy and Matt Miazga are disappearing a little more along with DeAndre Yedlin. Just go ahead and be a shithead. Like, please, just stay away from our guys for a little bit.
Right. Oh man. So
I'm excited. Kevin, you excited about this? We talked a lot. What do you think?
I love this. I love this move. And like you guys, 2014 World Cup, DeAndre Yedlin's my favorite version of Yedlin. And Grayson, you mentioned this previously. But yeah, watched a lot of his games where he sat on the bench for Tottenham for a long time, trying to find Newcastle games. I think they won the championship with him on that roster one point. Yeah. So yeah, like it's a long career that he's had that's all led up to this moment. And it just so happens to be a near perfect fit for what FC Cincinnati needs. Like, yeah, there's only like one or two other guys within MLS that really would have met this profile and have been seen as like a huge upgrade over what we have on the roster. And yeah, like not only is he's at this point too, which is he is a very good addition to FCC. He is so good of an addition to FCC that you almost have to look at Miami and think, what is exactly happening here?
You have no idea.
Roster compliance.
It's like
right.
Like before this thing happened, you have no idea the level of player I was ready to talk up. Like I had resigned myself to us signing like Zachary Broguillard. It was like yeah, this is gonna be perfect.
You've been on my ass about like, oh, you don't need an expensive right wing back. Yeah, no, you can get a good wing back for like $25,000. No, this is it. Let's do this.
It's a very cheap acquisition. All right. Cheap right wing backs were available out there.
Do we think he has Lionel Messi's cell phone number?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or at least he's in a WhatsApp with him. Yes.
Yeah.
And he needs to he needs to give it to Miazga so that Pulisic is no longer the most famous person in Miazga's phone.
Did love that Pulisic answered for Miazga, but not for Zimmerman. Let you know where the battle lines are within the locker room. All right, I'm choosing to read that.
Look, I understand that I have a blood feud against Christian Pulisic for his comments after the friendly game where he said there weren't enough Americans in the stands at TQL Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I accept that. I'm going to hate him for the rest of time just because I got to put on for my city. Having said that, is FC Cincinnati the favorite to land Christian Pulisic now when he decides to return to MLS? You'd have 100%. You'd have to make us the betting favorites.
There's no way he'd go to a team like Philly, right? To be like the hometown kid.
They wouldn't
pay him.
Right. They wouldn't do it. He might have an ownership stake in Philly now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's allowed to go there. I don't know how that works.
Ownership stake.
Chief, please.
So, if you need any more reason to love DeAndre Yedlin, it turns out DeAndre Yedlin was an investor in the San Diego Loyal, which was the USL club that was forced to fold as a result of MLS expanding to San Diego. And then all of their fans, who are sellouts and cowards, immediately transferred their fandom, their loyalty, if you will, to the new San Diego MLS project. So as a result of San Diego's MLS team, DeAndre Yedlin, by all accounts, it looks like, lost his investment in the Loyal.
Wow.
Kevin, are we successfully incepting this into reality, this rivalry here?
Look, all roads point to San Diego, unfortunately, here. All right. So this is, it's fate. We need to defend our man's honor. And I'm very happy to say DeAndre Yedlin officially, well, not officially, but probably by the time of this recording goes out, is our man.
Is San Diego joining next year?
They are.
Okay, so he'll still be on the roster under contract next year when he makes his return to San Diego to take revenge on the team. You can hurt a man's spirit. You can hurt a man's pride. But when you hurt a man's wallet,
oof,
blood debt must be paid.
Game on.
Those whales' vaginas won't know what's coming.
Oh, God. Well, I think that's enough about the breaking news. There was a game, in fact, to talk about in this one. So we should probably go ahead and do that in part 2. And then in part 3, we'll touch on some MLS topics in general. So, yeah, head on over to part 2. Let's talk a little soccer, shall we? And before we get into the next part of the episode, I want to tell you about our other sponsor, Cincy Shirts. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that you've never heard of Cincy Shirts, I'm going to sit here and tell you I don't believe you, because these guys have been with FC Cincinnati from the very beginning. And we here at The Post, well, we are just huge fans of their work. They have tons of really cool FC Cincinnati gear, shirts, hoodies, hats, all sorts of cool stuff. Go over to their website, check out what they are selling. You want to go to cincyshirts.com. That is Cincy with a Y, or you can just click the link in the description of this episode. And when you go there, use the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, and they will knock 10% off your next order. They have MLS and MLSPA licensed FCC gear available online or in their 3 retail locations in Hyde Park, Fort Mitchell, or Loveland. And I can attest to this. I've used this before. If they don't have your size on the shelf, they can probably print you one on the spot in the store. So again, huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring the podcast, and a huge thank you to you, dear listener, for using that promo code. All right, here we go, part 2. And on a normal weekend, this would be part 1, but here we are in part 2. There was a match. There was a win for FC Cincinnati over the weekend.
And it really puts into perspective how big the news was that this is bumping an actual first win of the season to segment 2, but I guess it's not every day that we sign a player that Grayson can pull the jersey out and start wearing immediately when we tape. So
sometimes you gotta bust out the old threads. This was a fun one, Chief. I will correct you just because otherwise other people will. First win in MLS play. Sir. We have seen 2 victories, 1 in person already.
Those Cavalier games felt like preseason. Come on.
They said it on the broadcast too. Noonan basically said as much, that they only played 4 preseason games because they knew they were starting the season off with 2 against Cavalier. So
yeah.
It kind of shows.
Yeah, a little bit.
It kind of shows. So we'll dive into this in our usual bit here. But once again, just sort of like my general point with this one is like, once again, FC Cincinnati slow to get into a match, but then slowly grows into it. And by the end, you almost feel silly for ever doubting that they weren't the best team and going to win this one. At least that was my impression.
Yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. The first part of this match, so my top line takeaway from this match was that we're it's similar to yours, Kevin, is that we are the Bowser or the Donkey Kong of Mario Karts.
Okay, yes.
There's a top speed to hit, but getting up to speed can be challenging sometimes.
Yes.
And so the first half of this game looked very much like they were picking up where they left off against Toronto. I'd say the first 15 minutes of this game.
Yeah.
Where it looked disjointed. There were a lot of very poor touches, a lot of passes that were being played that were, not the best ball you could pick out. The team looked like it was struggling a little bit with the energy of the high press that was going on in the match. And then slowly but surely, they started to ping more passes together. The touches got a little better, and the team started going through the gears and hit the top speed. And it was clear Chicago just really, really couldn't keep up with this team when it was at its most effective. And it's a good thing they got that way, because when they get to that speed, I don't think there's a lot of teams that can touch them if they get up there.
Yeah, there are moments in this game where the entire team is able to just one touch, pass the ball around, ping the ball, work the ball around, and you feel like you're finally seeing the fully finished product that Noonan has been wanting for some time now. Grayson, top line takeaway from this one? Is there a big lesson to be learned overall, or impressions?
It's that the center backs are really good.
Yeah.
I mean all of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's Murphy included in that as well. They look bored playing the game.
Good.
There are times where you look and watch them, they're not bothered by anything. They play with almost, like that scene in The Matrix where Neo all of a sudden starts moving faster than everybody, and he looks amused at how quickly things are happening. And, wow, this is fascinating that I can block all this right here. That's the back line for this team. Just nothing gets by them. They are rarely threatened. There were a couple times in this game where Miles Robinson looked beat and then tracked back and dispossessed someone, blocked off a shot. He ran a dude out the back line where the guy just dribbled out for a goal kick because Miles just had better positioning than him and just forced him out. I mean, it was sublime watching this play. I think Chicago had maybe 2 good chances all match, and one of them happened within the first 5 minutes.
I think like 90% of their XG was the penalty.
Yeah.
So when we signed Miles Robinson, there was like massive scorned boyfriend, she was never that hot anyway, energy from Atlanta United fans. And they were like, oh, believe it or not, we're actually signing an upgrade.
Gregerson, somebody that Nijkamp passed on.
Yeah. Or shit.
Not Nijkamp. It was Albright last year.
Oh, was it Albright? Okay.
Albright wasn't willing to pay what it needed to get it right. And, Atlanta fans even went so far as like sharing like a highlight where they were like, this is what you're getting. And it like Robinson lost the ball, but like it wasn't like a play that I would say was like really Robinson's fault ultimately. Like, and I would say, and there was also talk about like, oh, he's going to be like a massive step down from Mascara. And no shade to these are all, and when I say this, I mean, it's in the fact that like these are all like very high level players. Mm-hmm. He is not a step down from Mascara. No. And when we all thought, I think that he profiled really well in our center back group, and the returns so far indicate that to be true.
The most impressive thing, I think, especially about the beginning of this match, is that these center backs look this good, with the outside backs being Powell on the right and Yuya Kubo playing for, as far as I can tell, the first time in his professional career on the left as the left wing back. Just wild. You'd expect there to be some sort of hiccup, some sort of miscommunication, some blown assignment. And not to say Kubo and Powell are bad by any means. They're just definitely not the first choice starters in those positions. And yet it didn't seem to throw the center backs for a loop at all.
No, there is basically everything you would want in this back line as an MLS team. I'm going to, at some point, dive into this. This has to be in the running for best center back grouping starting in the history of this league. I mean, it has to be close if it isn't. You've got Ian Murphy.
I don't know enough about the history of MLS, to be honest.
Neither do I. But now I'm intrigued.
It certainly feels true.
It feels very true, and I'm intrigued enough to actually look this up at some point. That might be a lie, but I might not be that intrigued. But size, speed, experience, and then with Murphy, you get youth and a player whose growth at this point is exceeding expectations by leaps and bounds. And Murphy has to feel like he won the lottery, in that he is now playing on a back line with two people that are also Americans in the U.S. men's national team player pool, decorated American veterans who he can learn from, who can help teach him the game. And there's not even a cultural or a language difference between the people he's playing with. These are guys who, similar backgrounds as him, coming up through academy systems, coming up into, training with the national team. This is one of those things where it's the stupid FIFA Ultimate Team thing, where what color are the lines going across to someone? Like, these are all bright green lines right here. These are green lights the entire way around in terms of this pairing. And it's so fun to watch that you really don't, I don't know if you guys had this, but as this game was progressing, Chicago got gets the penalty, and we'll talk about it in a second here. But I had no worry they were going to score from open play. Right, I didn't see that happening in this game. I didn't see them beating the back line for anything.
And talking about Murphy, Murphy has now played with Jeff Cameron, Matt Miazga, Miles Robinson, and I'll throw him in there, Nick Hagland, right? 4 people who have made very good careers as professional center backs with different profiles, who have done it different ways. if you are a young center back who wants to, make a career, what kind of player has he not been able to learn from?
Right.
Like he's probably had examples of, throw Blackett in there, who also had a long career
right
at center back. And if you're somebody who is willing to learn and watch and figure out, like, how can I make my way? He's gone through like a PhD program
right.
in like the kind of things that he can do and figure out like how he is going to fulfill his career and maximize his potential.
Right. And at the same time, last year, with Mosquera being brought in, that's who he's pushing, right? That's his young competition. Yep. Obviously, Mosquera's at a higher level already, but that's what he needs to be comparing himself to. And that's exciting to have yet another young guy who is probably, a step ahead of you in this, but that's who you're challenging yourself to be more like, or to outcompete day in and day out. Yeah, like it doesn't get better than that setup there. I mean, maybe you want a veteran goalkeeper who just has seen more behind you barking out orders. That's the only thing. Not that Celentano's any slouch, but man, that's maybe the missing piece from your education here.
But it also, it goes back to what we talked about in the first segment, and that's kind of DeAndre Yedlin now. Yeah. He's another guy who's been around, 30. He's a guy that's seen a little bit of stuff out there and who has been documented in previous stops as being someone that the younger players looked up to. So now, if you consider him part of this back line as well, I think you should. You've now got Miazga with Premier League technically experience and European experience. You've got Yedlin, Premier League and European experience. You pair that with Murphy and Robinson, Murphy and Robinson probably both want to go to Europe at some point in their careers as well. Roman too. You have a mix of that's all Americans right there. And I'll throw Kip Keller into the mix too, because Kip Keller was highly touted.
Still a young guy.
And what a great situation for him to develop in as well and learn from as well. It is a mix of Americans who have done it and come back, and Americans who want to go over there and do it, all in the same sort of defensive side of the field. And that was a joy to watch last night. And I think that there are still some questions about the offense. I think there are still some questions about how this team is going to generate scoring opportunities. But if you are starting from a premise of our defense is good enough that we feel confident one goal at least gets us a point, that will cover up a ton of other sins in this sport.
Yeah, it's, to maybe get way ahead of ourselves and compare it to other sports. In football, this is the idea of like, if you put the best possible offensive line in front of a mediocre quarterback, you got a chance of competing deep into the playoffs in that theory. Or in baseball, you've got 4 number 1 aces in your rotation and let's say a 3 for your 5th guy. Like, I don't care what your batting average is up and down the lineup. You prevent the other team from scoring, and your offense can be bang average, and you're going to do just fine competing day in and day out. Not to say that Bupenza is some slouch on offense, but it allows a lot more forgiveness up front where it can be a little hot and cold on the best teams in the world, that it gives that offense a platform to be able to take over games.
In other words, you're making sure that you're staying in games and keeping games close.
Yes.
So that you have time and you're still competitive while your offense is working out its, for lack of a better word, identity.
Right.
So, as a question, though, because I was thinking about this yesterday, this approach seems to be falling out of favor in world football, though, in world soccer. And it seems like the push everywhere is more dynamic offensive play, more goal scoring. You look at you look at like who was at the top of the Premier League years ago. It was guys like Jose Mourinho. And now that approach has fallen out of favor towards more of the Jurgen Klopp style, more of the wide open play that they have at City. Even in MLS last year, the league is won by Wilfred Nancy, who's regarded as an offensive genius, who puts together creative offensive game plans. Is there a worry that we are, this is fun. It's fun to watch a team lock down and play defense, but there's an old saying, you can't win a game 0 to -1. Like, you got to put the ball in the net to a certain extent. Are we zigging while the rest of soccer is zagging right now and finding success, or is this not sustainable?
I think about like Moneyball, right?
Right.
And like the lesson of Moneyball isn't like, oh, everybody needs to just care about, on base percentage or whatever.
Right.
The lesson of Moneyball is you find value where other people aren't looking. Especially when there's spend restrictions or you're on a budget, right? And so I think in a salary cap league, it makes a lot of sense to like lean into strengths, but also like if you're able to just get strong at the back, why not do it? And sports are also copycat, so like
right.
If everybody is going for the same kind of thing, you can like get an advantage by going in a different direction.
Yeah.
And so like I'm not really concerned because if you don't give up goals and you have enough on the other end to score yourself, that's good. And also, I think it's a good sign that the team is not just looking at how other clubs are building their squad, that they're making their own choices and relying on their own judgment.
Yeah. I think too, Chief, I think especially in the context of MLS, I do think it's more zigging when everybody else is zagging. That MLS, given the salary restrictions and the fact that you can only have 3 designated players, just like we've seen with FC Cincinnati, you're encouraged to put those towards the top half of the field, right? The attacking half of the field generally. And yet, FC Cincinnati, Chris Albright, has gone out and built a non-DP owning, but like top-end defense that nobody else has. And at the very least, will offer the strongest defense to all of these teams that they'll face week in and week out. I think it's an interesting experiment at a minimum to see what would happen if you tried to build a defense that was capable of containing MLS attacking talent, and it would look exactly like this with Obi in the midfield, a two-way player like Boup. And this is not to say that this is an anemic offense built around a strong defense. I mean, Bupenza on paper is one of the most productive DPs in league history on a goal contribution per minute standpoint. We have yet to see the best of Luca Oriano. Maybe Yedlin's best offensive days are behind him, but he's certainly no slouch. And oh, by the way, there's this guy named Lucho Acosta in the midfield that is capable of magical moments at any one time. I do think that we see the, let's say, expected loaning out of Angulo and the acquisition of a U22 striker. And all of a sudden, this is one of the most complete teams ever assembled in MLS history. I really like the theory behind this build, at least.
Yeah, I don't want to rehash too much what we already talked about, because we got to talk about the game a little bit. But I do think that, we talked about this probably like ad nauseum last year. The amount of attention that was just paid to the spine of the team. And like, we're not spending DP money on a winger. We are going to own the center of the field. And I think against I was looking at, I know Miami beat the shit out of Orlando, yes. But I was looking at it and I was like, you can play through that midfield.
Absolutely.
You could beat them in the center of the field based on personnel. And so I like what I really like what's been done with the team, and I think the strengths were evident last night, and where there's room for growth was also evident.
Yeah. To dive into this game, let's lay out the lineup first, because there were certainly some names here worth talking about. So in goal, Joey Apinonu. Your center backs from left to right: Obi, Marco Angulo, Aaron Bupenza. Yeah, I won't do the whole bit. I was committed in my head to do the whole bit. I'm not going to do the whole bit. No, the Apple TV crew, I guess, put a random number generator in for the lineup. That was a very bizarre graphic that they posted. If you did not see that, they had one of the most insane lineup graphics ever produced. No, I'll give you.
It will live forever on the internet's history as a testament to that. Just because you're the most valuable company in the world doesn't make you immune from a screw up or two here and there.
I did not even check to see if Chicago's was remotely accurate. I was just too taken aback by what I saw with FCC. No, your lineup was as expected. Roman Celentano in goal, Ian Murphy, Matt Miazga, Miles Robinson as your backline, Yuya Kubo, as we mentioned, as the left wing back, and Alvis Powell as the right wing back, Buka, Wobodo, and Acosta as your midfield trio, and Bupenza and Baird up top. I guess now as good a point as any to bring up this news. Very sad. We kind of caught whispers of something being wrong ahead of this. The news reports come out. Luca Oriano dealing with family issues back in South America. We now know, following the match, his father passed away. So he was not with the team. And very just devastating. He's 23 years old. That is very young for anybody to be losing a parent like that. I'd expect him to be out. I mean, who knows how long? Take as much time as you need.
However long it takes.
Yeah. But
awful.
I wouldn't expect him back for some time.
He'll have plenty of time with the team.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also not making the bench, and I missed the memo on this until about halfway through the game. Kip Keller, not on the bench, even in concussion protocol. So that explains the lineup. Once we sort of got the understanding, everything made sense. I guess it's interesting that Halsey didn't get a start. I had been asking for it, but Yuya Kubo makes as good a sense as anybody in that spot.
Should we just pencil Yuya Kubo in as a coach in the academy after his career is over? Because who better to teach you how to be versatile,
right,
and play multiple positions than Yuya Kubo?
So the announcer said that it was Kubo's fifth position under Pat Noonan, and I think it was his seventh.
All right, how does your math work out?
Yeah, so I'm a very generous lover for Pat, if that's the case.
I'm pretty sure that he has played striker with Vasquez, and he's played striker with other players.
Yes,
so I would view those as two different positions.
Okay.
He's come in for Lucho and played Lucho's job.
Yep.
He's played in the midfield with Obi, and he's played in the midfield with Moreno.
Yep.
So that's two. So now we're already at five. And now he's played right wing back and left wing back.
Yeah.
So for me, that's seven.
Against Columbus Crew at Crew 2 years ago, They also played, I think, with wingers, and he played a right wing position as well in that one. So I'd be willing to go 8.
Well, that's, yeah, sure. Let's go.
So yeah, Kubo I was fine. Maybe a better left back than a right back from what we've seen.
I do think he seemed to be comfortable, like kind of coming in, like out to in.
Yes,
from the wingback spot. So I don't disagree with you that he looked better at the left wing back than right wing back. Although hopefully we don't have to worry about this anymore.
Yes,
I mean, hopefully, but I mean, I do think that going back to, on the somber note, we don't know how long Oriano is going to be out for.
That's true.
And
that's true.
He could be back with this team this weekend. It wouldn't shock me at all if he's gone for a couple of weeks. And if that's the case, they may need Yuya Kubo to hold the fort down at left wing back. And I thought he played well. I don't think he was a standout by any means, but he also wasn't a liability out there, which is all you could ask for and more. I did
have a thought during the game.
Go for it.
I was like, because it felt like we played a lot down Alvis's side, and Alvis also was pretty active defensively. I did have a thought watching the game where I was like, Alvis Powell is the best wingback on this roster.
And that's terrifying.
The Halsey erasure I will overlook for the time being. No, he came in and it wasn't his best. Wasn't his best game.
Yeah, Halsey looked. So I'll say this: Halsey had a terrible sequence to start his appearance.
Right.
He did kind of settle in, I think, and looked like, average.
Yeah.
But they don't have a unit of measurement small enough to measure how fast I got to my phone to text Kevin as soon as he looked bad right out of the chute.
He was bad.
Yeah.
His first 2 actions were almost disasters.
Yeah.
Right.
So the first player I want to start off talking about in this game, beyond the wingback play, is I was very impressed in this game with Pavel Buka in this game.
Yeah.
I thought this was far and away. I know the sample size of MLS play is 2, but
Malé sample size.
Yeah. Having said that, of the 2 matches, far and away his best match, I thought he was incredibly active. He almost scored a goal, should have scored a goal, I think.
Such a great shot.
His movement, and
great
I thought especially
from Brady there. Just lucky. Mostly lucky reaction. That happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
repeat that play again. It's a goal next time.
Yeah. And I thought he was aggressive in his pressing. I thought he was aggressive in his defensive play as well. I thought he was great. And I thought that was sort of, watching him play last night, you very much got the sense of like, oh, this is why everyone was raving about this guy down in Florida. Because that was immediately an effort that is not only replicating what Junior Moreno's baseline level was, you were seeing a top end flash where it's like, oh, this guy can be really good once he gets a little more comfortable in the system with his teammates.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I thought we saw this is a really good Moreno replacement with flashes of what there could be more of.
Yeah, that shot that he got off. I know in the previous episode we said, or I said that on my wish list for this game was a Buka highlight, and we were inches away from getting exactly that. I'm still gonna count it. Like, that shot was the cherry on top of a sequence of play that was basically just one touch pass all over the field leading up to that, the cross to the top of the box. It was so nice.
Was that the best sequence of play? Like,
it's the best I can remember.
The whole game.
Yeah.
It was really good.
It was so nice. I mean, the corner kicks were great all night from Acosta.
We should talk about the corner kicks a bit, because
Okay.
So let's
all right, let's go to we'll do the corner kicks now, since it was brought up. So I usually hate corners that go to the near post that don't beat the first man. And I've seen Lucho hit a lot of those where you can tell it wasn't what he was trying to do. And it's kind of why people got on Lucho for his corner delivery, was that there were a lot of corners that Lucho got over the last couple of years where they didn't beat the first man.
Yeah.
So they do that the first time, and it's low, it's driven into the box, and you're like, oh, God damn it, Lucho, you're an MVP candidate. Get the ball up, get it up high to somebody that can hit this. But it kind of skipped through and created at least a dangerous save opportunity or a save chance that that Chicago had to make. So they come back and they do it the next corner, and they do the exact same thing, and it's dangerous again. And then at that point, it's like I'm at the bar watching this with the wife, and I'm like, I almost yell, like, they've seen something. This is coaching. When they talk about, oh, they must have been working on that on the training grounds. Like, no, somebody on the coaching staff saw something in the way Chicago defends set pieces that they are susceptible to just missing the ball at the near post, because they weren't even trying to score near post. It was, they were confident that ball was going to get all the way through whatever Chicago was doing. And they had multiple good opportunities that eventually they cash in with Robinson's goal. But that's like the first time I can remember watch in a while, because I'm an idiot. I'm not, I didn't play soccer at a super high level. Been a fan for a while, but that doesn't mean dick. This is one of the first things I can remember in a while where it's like, that is some high level coaching going on right there, that they identified a weakness and they are just outright exploiting it in real time. And that was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, they had a couple of corners in the air that created dangerous opportunities. Like there was the one, I think Bupenza got ahead on one.
Yeah, in the first half in particular, there were a couple that were forced big saves from Brady. Yeah,
but based on what he described on our show last season,
yes,
I'm going to go ahead and say Kenny Arena is the set piece coach. I'm going to give him. Yes. I'm going to give Kenny credit for whatever was happening, because they were goal dangerous on corner kicks basically all game.
Yep.
And it was very clear too that they had a moment watching the film like, oh, we got these guys. I can't remember the team looking this dangerous on set pieces consistently ever. Like, I don't think that there was more than one or two set piece opportunities, off corners at least, where they didn't generate at least an opportunity where like, oh, that's getting to somebody, or that could get to somebody.
Yeah. It was great.
The other big set piece thing that I noted in this game is that I don't know that this came up in the Toronto game, but with Barrial gone as their other set piece taker, we saw Aaron Bupenza out there giving a rip from outside the 18 on a set piece, and I don't know that I need to see that again.
Yeah.
I will say, however, if we could get the St. Louis treatment this year, that would be great. And by that, I mean other teams' defenses passing our dangerous attacker the ball, especially on their half of the field. I could get used to that. That was pretty nice. Bupenza, for the first goal, the 39th minute, receives the ball. It was a miscontrolled pass from the Chicago center back.
The hell with that. It was an assist from the other team.
Yeah, but it just went
passed a square ball and right to Bupenza. One tap onto the left foot, back of the net. You couldn't ask for a better service than that.
It was so nice. And yeah, it was just surgical. Like, he's outside the box, so it's not exactly a gimme. And to just turn and bury it, the corner there, Brady didn't have a chance, man. It was it was a fantastic way to start the game. That was exactly what you wanted to see. And Grayson, again, this was your point. You said you wanted to see the ball go into the back of the net against Cavalier. Bupenza gets a 60-minute run out there, maybe to try to get his confidence up. Scores in that one. All of a sudden, here we go. We're off to the races. We're starting to score. He's confident with that strike. This is everything we wanted from an Aaron Bupenza performance. So good on him. And we got a backflip. So that was fantastic.
Which I don't need to see from a man getting off a hamstring injury. I don't need that. I liked it, but I don't need that.
It's a statement of health right there. All is well and good with the hammy on that one. However, it was but 5 minutes later, that Obi gets caught via VAR with I think this is pretty harsh. I know, Chief, you have a different take on this one. Foul at the very corner of the box, the top right corner looking out away from goal. Was it foul on Gutierrez? Is that who it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Brian Gutierrez, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So foul on Gutierrez, and VAR goes ahead, awards the penalty after the play, and Shaqiri buries the penalty. Very annoying. It was one of those, though, when you listen back, or if you watch back, listen back, the Chicago crowd isn't that upset about no penalty.
None of the players protest.
None of the players are complaining. That's always my tip off, and yet awarded the penalty. Chief, did it make you reassess your position on the referee lockout?
Some may say that this is good karma for a team that doesn't immediately mob the official demanding that a call get made, that they went about their business, they continued to play, and the sports gods rewarded them with the call. Yeah. No, I hate this call, but it's right. That's I can't get too fired up about it. I mean, we have benefited from this call. We benefited from it last year. I think it was I want to say the Atlanta game, but I know that's not right. Where they are penalty calls where you are awarding a PK from an otherwise completely non-threatening situation. Where I think we had one where I think it was Lucho was knocked over, or somebody was knocked over with their back to goal at the top of the 18-yard box. And it's okay, that's a non-threatening position to commit a foul. And that person is never going to be a danger to scorers, such that awarding them basically a guaranteed goal is fair. But by the letter of the game's law, which is stupid, but it's the letter of the law, if you commit that foul in the box, and on the replays I saw, it looked pretty clear that Obi steps on his foot as he's coming through the box, and he goes to ground. That's a foul, and it sucks. It sucks that you get a free goal out of a position that you were never going to score in or even be a threat to score in. But it's not the wrong call. It's the right call. I just hate the way the game's rules are in that moment.
So I'm not at this point all that interested in whether that was a proper foul call or not. For me, it sucks. It's a moment of bad luck because, he knocks the ball away. There's a little bit of follow through. He's not going in on the player, but he's got, he's kind of briefly out of control of his body, and his foot contacts Gutierrez's foot. I do feel like that type of thing is often not called. We did get a call of a situation where the ball's gone, the player's moving away from goal, and I don't remember what it was, but we had the same kind of philosophical debate about this kind of call where it's the play's over essentially. But and the player's going away from goal, but he is fouled and it is in the box and it is a penalty. So if it's a foul, it's a penalty. That's fine. Whatever. My problem is we've had that called against us, and it's that's a clear penalty. And even yesterday, the announcer was just so excited to declare that it's a penalty.
Right.
And when we got that call last year, I don't remember what it was either, but it felt like we were almost expected to be apologetic about getting that call. And I saw on Twitter, people are like, that's a penalty every day. It's a penalty every day. I'm like, you don't get any points for declaring that this is a penalty. It's not a situation where Chicago generated anything to cause themselves to get a free goal.
Right.
And you don't have to like disagree with the call, not to be like, oh, I'm glad it was called a penalty. You know, like we deserved it.
Right.
Like
right.
it was a moment of bad luck. And I'm not going to go on Twitter and just be like the smartest person in the world and be like, well, that's a penalty every day under the laws of the game.
Right.
Like, it was a moment of bad luck. It was fucking stupid. Like, Chicago didn't do anything to earn that penalty. Obi just had a lapse of, body control or whatever. It wasn't like, and the ref and the announcer was like, that's not a red for me. Why are you talking about it being a red?
Right. Hang on.
He's not studs. He's not 2-footed. He's not studs up. There's no defensive goal scoring opportunity.
Right.
Like, what? Why are we even talking about this?
The one thing,
is it the right call? Yeah, probably. But
we did find out. Hold on, we did find out.
I'm not going to try to show off that. Like, I know that's the right call to people. It's a fucking it's one of the worst things of the game that you can get a free goal out of a foul like that.
Yeah,
we did find out subsequently, I think today, that there was an edict that went out from MLS to all of the commentary teams to tone down a little bit of the rhetoric about the ref lockout. So maybe this was a broadcast team trying to elevate the games it's being assigned to, deciding to go hard in the paint, applauding the referee for making the right call. I honestly think, this is my little conspiracy theory, I don't think that call is made if the standard referees are officiating.
I agree.
Games. Because here's my problem with the call, if I have one, is that by the laws of the game, is that a penalty? The answer is yes. Is that such a clear and obvious non-call that we have to like stop the match and go to VAR for a foul in the corner of the box with player moving away from goal? If you call that in real time, I don't have a problem with that. You know what? It sucks. I think Obi needs to be more careful in that moment, but it's sort of an unlucky lottery sort of thing. But pulling the game back to award a penalty, a guaranteed goal for a call like that the official lets go on the field, I don't think that happens if the regular MLS officials are on the field. I think the only reason it happens is because now VAR is hypersensitive and the league is hypersensitive to missing calls. And so they would rather pull the game back, stop the game, make that call, than let it go by and then have that be something that is being shown on Twitter as see, the replacement officials missed this call. Whereas if it was just the PSRA officials, because they don't give a shit whether or not they miss calls, the hell with you for criticizing the glorious work we do, they wouldn't pull the game back and do that. They would be like, play on, you don't deserve, you have not earned a free goal here, and we, the gods and lords of this game, shall not award you one here.
Well, we've already seen it with referees in the past last year where they waive off VAR requests, because essentially how it works is they make a recommendation to the center ref to re-review a play, and the center ref has the authority to essentially disregard the suggestion. Yeah, that's exactly what would happen here. Is you'd have a different referee who is so confident in their ability to see penalties that they would know in their mind that if it was a penalty, they would have seen it. Therefore, they didn't see it. Therefore, it's not a penalty. And it never would have been a thing. And then maybe after the match, a Chicago fan or a Chicago journalist can pull this clip up and say, hey, by the letter of the law, this should have been a penalty, guys. What's going on? So, yeah, I completely agree with you, Chief.
So I think, two things on that. One is I agree with basically what Chief said, except for the fact that if it was a PSRA ref, they're not going to miss a chance to call a penalty against this season.
Good call.
So if it was like another team, then yeah, I agree. And the other thing is so I watched an interview, and we'll talk about this probably later in more detail in segment 3, but I watched an interview with the head of the PSRA union with Adam Conover, the guy from Adam Ruins Everything. And the PSRA union had a guy named Peter Manikowski said that he's like, part of being a ref is like using your judgment and like knowing like, yeah, there was contact, but I'm going to allow play to continue, and yes, like that's a situation where I think generally a ref who's not concerned about being under a microscope, because we're told not to put the PSRA officials under a microscope, they would not call that. They would just say like, well, that's still, I'm not going to like stop the game for that. Like it's a whoopsie daisy.
Yeah.
But with the microscope that the replacement officials are under, they do kind of need to be like perfect on this VAR stuff, which is also, I think, why there's been a slight uptick in the total of uses of VAR.
Yes.
Is I think that they're trigger happy because they know that any time that a call is missed, a bunch of scab journalists from The Athletic are gonna blast it out on Twitter and say like, oh, the PSRA official would never, call a wrong out of bounds after like the ball goes through a scrum of 5 players and dings slightly off of, one guy that like nobody in real time could possibly have seen, and I call The Athletic scab journalists because, as we listeners of this podcast know, but I don't think The Athletic journalists know, because based on their descriptions of supporting labor on Twitter, is the New York Times closed down their sports desk, and the New York Times union actually put a grievance in that union labor that was previously done by employees of the New York Times sports desk was being done by non-union The Athletic journalists. So I just find that interesting, and it's something that nobody mentions. I just find it interesting.
We're gonna keep the torch up for that.
Yeah.
On the subject, beyond the subject of officiating, can we get,
which was fine this game, by the way?
It was fine. No, the officiating was fine. It was no better or no worse than it is any other MLS match that I've seen in my lifetime.
There were even some nice, I thought, play-ons on like both ways throughout the game.
Can we, as the Post, can we work with Cincy shirts to develop a merch line where the proceeds are paid to hiring a goalie psychologist for Roman, just to get him to understand the George Costanza mentality of whatever you're thinking when it comes to deciding which way you want to dive to stop a PK, just do the opposite. Like if you think he's going right, dive left. Because am I mistaken this, Grayson? I don't know that Roman has ever dived. Like the last time he dived the right way, I think was when he stopped his last PK in Salt Lake. I mean, my man is addicted to going the wrong way. I don't know if he's showing something too early and everyone has picked up on this, or if he's so deep in his head that, the Force is messing with him and he's being Jedi mind tricked to go the wrong way. But just the guessing is awful. 50-50. You should be able to guess right, at least the direction right, 50% of the time. And he's nowhere near a lot of these penalties.
Yeah, I don't have the stats or anything available to tell you like whether he's dived the right direction or not. Although I do think he did dive the right direction on at least one of those New York Red Bull penalties in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, the one that he finally stopped at the very end. I think that might have been the first one.
But I mean, I'll tell you, I didn't watch the penalty because I was like, I don't need to see them score. There's no suspense here. But I'll also add that like stopping penalties is not one of the top 5 things for me for a keeper.
Be nice if it happened though.
Yeah, surely it would be nice. But like I don't think, if like Roman could never save a penalty again, and it's not going to be the reason for me that like I ever call for him to be replaced.
No, I'm not calling for my man to be replaced.
I know. I'm just staking out that ground is all I'm saying.
We're a pro-Roman podcast. I need him to, whatever you're thinking, do the opposite. Because I don't know. I forget. I mean, I guess this is unfair for me because, the last time he took a PK, he did save it, which would have been against New York in the playoffs, or not New York in the playoffs. Who did we go to PKs with in the playoffs?
New York Red Bulls.
New York Red Bulls. Yeah. Like finally stopped it after
infamously.
9, 10 chances, I think, or something like that. But like, I'm just saying that maybe there's an opportunity for Cincy Shirts and us to work together to make this a little better.
Well, the sad news is Can's not any better, right?
No,
so it's got to,
especially not with one hand.
It's got to go to Evan, who, as we learned, takes PK penalties or practice from Lucho. So he probably
but we also know that Evan is against subbing in the goalie just for penalties.
Yes.
So
he would refuse it out of honor.
I guess we're stuck with our, U.S. men's national team goalkeeper of the year finalist.
I know. I guess we'll be okay with this. God damn it.
It's a tough life we live as FC Cincinnati fans these days.
Right. It's I don't know how we stick with it.
The rest of the game was, it was fine. It was a little more back and forth.
Love to see Miles Robinson scoring. Love that for him.
Yep.
Yeah, on the corner kick, as we discussed, which was a problem for Chicago all night. Just reaction shot into the side netting. It was really, really well taken from Miles. It's really nice to see him score a goal. He's not like a Walker Zimmerman type center back or Sergio Ramos type where you'd expect him to score a lot. He is definitely one known for his defensive capabilities. I think only had less than 10 goals maybe in his time in Atlanta. But already off to a flying start for FCC. Absolutely love it. Corey Baird had a moment in this game taking a pass out of the air and having a looping shot that was deftly saved that looked really good this game.
It was a ball from Lucho, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And the pass was just sublime. It was one of those Lucho doing Lucho things where he reminds you, oh yeah, this guy is the reigning MVP. He's played very well. So I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to talk about players who I thought there were a lot of players that played very well. I thought the back line was spectacular. We've talked about that. Roman didn't have a lot to do outside of stopping the PK, which he didn't, but is what it is. Bupenza scored a goal that covers up the fact that he had kind of an otherwise forgettable shift, but you get your goal from your DP. That's fine. I did not think Corey Baird played well. I thought that one moment, taking the ball down from Lucho on that pass, was very good. That was a very high-level play, creating a scoring opportunity out of that, very high level. But otherwise, this is the second straight game where he's been mostly invisible. I don't know.
I haven't seen yet. So, like, part of what they talked about with Baird, right, is he's going to be able to come back and, like, play creatively, with Lucho and, be another creator versus just somebody who like receives the ball and scores and stuff. And I feel like we really haven't seen that. He's had multiple like almost goals in various games so far. So, maybe that'll get there.
Perfect timing for this conversation, by the way. Brandon Vasquez just scored for Monterrey.
Yeah.
Sick.
Sorry, continue.
So, yeah, I mean, like, we probably feel a little differently about Baird's game if he finishes a goal.
Yeah.
But, generally I agree. Like, I don't think he's settled in or shown how he can be dangerous in this offense yet.
Yeah.
It's too early to do anything either. Fun as as fun as it would be to like give Dotto a run up there, or I'm desperately intrigued by the idea of playing Yuya Kubo alongside Aaron Bupenza with Kubo in more of a striker role.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to give Baird some time to figure out how he fits into the flow of this offense, especially considering how free-flowing and position amorphous Lucho Acosta can be in the way he plays. So I'm keeping my eye on the fact that I think Baird has been, it's too early to put the D word on it, but I'm just going to say that I haven't seen enough from Baird yet to say anything positive about what he's doing.
Yeah, that connection with Lucho is something that, if it develops, is going to be incredible. And that's what you want to see, is more moments like that. We saw, the one goal on the preseason where he hits the one-touch volley from Lucho as well. Like, if that chemistry gets going, then I don't think there is this pressing need for a U22 striker. I mean, you'd still like to see it, don't get me wrong, but you'd like to see the front two firing on all cylinders there. So I am, like you, Chief, I'm desperately looking for any sign that is going the direction we want. And you mentioned it, Valenzuela. I had joked before the game that I'd love to see him start up top beside Bupenza. He did, in fact, sub in for Corey Baird in the 87th minute. So it is a like for like that the coaching staff was, or at least a substitution the coaching staff was willing to make there.
Santos has a new haircut too. I was hoping that would help things out, but it was very much more of the same from Sergio Santos.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least he keeps having interesting haircuts.
Yeah,
it's all you can ask for. I guess
it's really all you can ask for $800,000 a year or whatever he's making.
It's like we talked about. We talked about this with Yedlin. Like, wow, that's a lot of money for DeAndre Yedlin.
Yedlin salary in perspective, doesn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
We're paying Sergio Santos basically the same amount of money to just have cool haircuts and run.
More.
Yeah,
which is wild. He must be such an incredible vibes guy that you can't afford to get rid of him. Like, the Philly locker room.
The striker depth is also bad right now. So
fair enough.
But I mean, if you had that U22 striker right now, I still think I was a proponent of buying Santos out already, or using the buyout on him. You get that U22 striker, and I mean, Santos might not be long for this team.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at, is it doesn't seem impossible to find a striker to play that role, at least in MLS, that could, I don't know, score 7 goals a year. That doesn't feel like a terribly high bar to clear. And yet Santos is still on this team. I have to assume it's a culture thing, because otherwise you'd buy him out and you'd trade 300,000 GAM for somebody else. I can't name a hypothetical.
I really do feel like there's probably a reluctance to use the buyout on somebody who is a good locker room, good team guy. Mm-hmm. And, by all accounts, based on his time in Philly and his time here, Santos is a great professional. Yeah. He's a great teammate. And, that has value.
Yes. Is it 800,000?
I mean, that's
neither here nor there.
That's a lot of depth missing on this team right there.
It's a lot of scratch.
I will say too, the maybe part of the calculus is, if you do buy him out, he's immediately signing for Philly. And that's just like annoying to Albright and Noonan, is that he would in some way make them a little bit better just because all of their players were in open revolt about him leaving the first time, that he might be such a boost to them.
He's a guy, though, that if you found a home for him I could see them using the buyout if they found a destination for him in South America.
Maybe Barriel will put in a good word for him.
Where it's like,
that's pocket change to Monterey. Just get through this leg of CONCACAF Champions League and see if you can go.
Made Santos a package deal. You can have Vasquez, but we're gonna need you to take Santos as well.
It's like the offer for Vasquez is $8.5 million or $8 million, plus you have to take on Sergio Santos's contract. But it's like an NBA deal for an expiring contract.
But I'll be honest, all of this is moot with the current striker room.
Right.
Look, you need him. They're not in the business of buying out strikers right now. Make additions and then we can talk. But
Grayson, I don't know if you know it off the top of your head. How long is Santos here? Is it through this year? Is it through next year?
I thought it was through this year with an option for next year.
God help me if they pick that option up. I might burn the MLS basement down.
I could verify that. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
No, I like speculation. That's good enough for me.
Anything else in this game?
Good win,
good road
where
win.
I was going. Yeah.
I feel like we hit the main, main stuff. Right?
Yeah. You get the home draw.
He's done this year with an option for next year.
Okay.
You get the home draw, but then you go win on the road. You're back holding serve now, where you got 4 points out of a home game and a road game. So
and nobody in the league has won both their first 2 games.
That's impressive. Yeah, we're keeping pace with Miami, right? That's what we're all looking for.
And most importantly, this team has not, as we said, been scored on from open play this year in all competitions, and that's really cool.
Let's keep that going all the way through Thursday, right?
I feel like this team could compete for trophies if that continues for the remainder of the year.
I mean, there's no reason to doubt it at this point.
It's called a trend.
Chicago, I mean, we're so early in the season, too. It's really hard to gauge how good these teams are. Chicago did draw Philly in Philly. It was a nail-biter there. They lose to us. I mean, they could still be a very good team, but... I think
Philly is not going to be as good as they've been in the last couple of years. Unless, obviously, all of this depends on, roster additions or whatever.
Right.
I think Toronto is probably better than we and others gave them credit for before the season started. I think Chicago is probably not that much better than they were last year.
Yeah, play-in game feels right for them. Projecting out, but
they could make a run for that, I think.
See how well Kellen Acosta jives into that team. That could make a big difference, I think.
And no Andrew Gutman or Spencer Rich in this game. So.
And the Kuipers has a really good goal scoring record.
Yeah.
So it was in Belgium and he was with one of the big teams. So I don't know how much of that was feasting on WVSK Westerlo or whatever. But
or as we're seeing from Brandon Vasquez, just having better players delivering you service on a regular basis, that you're not dependent on one or two guys that can give good service, that you can get good service from the entire rest of your team.
But if he does continue the type of goal scoring he did over in Belgium, and you add that to Kellen Acosta gelling in, you could see Chicago being a non-play-in game playoff team.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the game against Philly, so maybe they looked way better. But I don't know. I think winning. I think it's a team that's it was fair to expect a victory on the road against them, and we got it.
Yep. So there we go. That's going to do it for this game. We're going to run over to part 3. I'm not moving. I'm going to sit right here. And we're going to talk a little bit of MLS big picture. So looking at some of the larger storylines, Open Cup referees, et cetera, and then we'll get you out of here. So join us for part 3. All right, here we are, part 3, a full agenda of things to talk about. We have a referee lockout still going strong. We have what I think is the final resolution of the US Open Cup, Inter Miami pantsing Orlando. Chief, where do you want to start with this one?
Let's start with the Open Cup, because we talked a lot about referees already, and we'll touch on that here in a second. So the U.S. Soccer, MLS, I guess MLS in the background, all governing bodies in the background, but U.S. Soccer announces that the 2024 U.S. Open Cup will be played, which was very much in doubt as recently as 2-3 weeks ago, with some changes in the participation of MLS teams. So the MLS participation in this tournament will be limited to the 8 teams in the Supporters Shield race who are otherwise not competing in CONCACAF Champions League, plus Houston as the defending champ. The remaining teams not in that list will be made up of their MLS Next Pro or Academy teams, with the exception of the teams playing in CONCACAF Champions League, I think, right? Is that not what wrong? That is exactly it. It's the teams that
I'm shaking my head because I don't like this, but continue.
So if you are in if you are in CONCACAF Champions League, none of your teams are participating.
Correct.
If you are in the next category of teams below that, your academy teams are playing. If you are in the next level below that, your first teams are playing, and then Houston goes in because they're the defending champs. Am I right on that?
So it was the top 7 teams in the Supporters Shield race not competing in the Champions League, which is Atlanta United, FC Dallas, LAFC, Real Salt Lake, San Jose Earthquakes, Seattle Sounders, Sporting Kansas City.
Those first teams are in the tournament. So, Chief, I think you had it reversed.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So those are in the tournament.
So those teams are in the tournament, and then Houston Dynamo was allowed to defend their U.S. Open Cup title. My guess is that they let Houston pick, and they might have been the only team that had a choice in all of this. If you were not Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, LAFC, Real Salt Lake, San Jose, Seattle, or Sporting Kansas City, and you are not in the CONCACAF Champions League, you are sending your MLS Next Pro team. If you are not one of those 8 teams and are in CONCACAF Champions League, you are not participating in the U.S. Open Cup in 2024. And pertinent to this podcast, that includes FC Cincinnati. So there will be no orange and blue representation from FC Cincinnati in any way, shape, or form. I didn't check to see. I don't think any of the Dutch Lions organizations made it either. So that means no representation from FC Cincinnati or even FC Cincinnati adjacent entities. Fine. They came up with a compromise. The original proposal from MLS was all MLS Next Pro teams. U.S. Soccer's rules, as they're written on the books, is that if you are a first division team, or in order to be a first division team, you have to participate in all of the competitions available to you, including, but not limited to, the U.S. Open Cup. In fact, the rules even go as far as to say that if you are fully owned by another team and are professional, you're not allowed to participate in the Open Cup. And yet, we're just going to go ahead and pretend like those rules don't exist. If I'm U.S. Soccer, I don't like this precedent I just let everybody set. I don't know. I don't like this.
My take on this is there was obviously a lot of backroom dealing on this. And if you dive deep into the stories about this, there are a lot of people on the U.S. Soccer board, as well as the people that are part of the team that puts together the Open Cup, that were left completely in the dark about this. A couple people have resigned as a result. I think Stu Holden resigned as a result of just, this seems like a clown show. I'm not being a part of this. This seems like a compromise that nobody at U.S. Soccer liked. I don't think MLS likes this compromise either, for what it's worth. I don't think that they were a fan of this. Hopefully, for the next 12 months, U.S. Soccer and MLS try to figure out some way to bring this tournament back that makes sense. I don't know what that is, but the current iteration of the U.S. Open Cup it doesn't work. And we know it doesn't work because nobody, like, I don't want to say nobody because that's obviously not true, but the vast majority of people do not care about this tournament. That's evident from the way the stands look. That's evident by the way it's covered. That's evident by the TV deals that's been given. We're talking about a tournament that was on YouTube because no one wanted to pick it up as recently as a couple of years ago. There's no money in covering this tournament because the inventory of games you get is a burden. You're being asked to televise games in stadiums that aren't set up for professional TV broadcasts in certain instances. They're weeknight games. And, we have this skewed view of the Open Cup in this city because this team went on a really magical run the second year we were in the tournament. The first year, we dumped out real quick. So, like, our real first memory as a city of the Open Cup is those scenes against the Chicago Fire, those scenes against the Columbus Crew, those scenes against the New York Red Bulls. That is an anomaly. You fast forward a year and we're playing Detroit City at Gettler Stadium. We're not even playing it at Nippert Stadium because the team has no confidence that game will sell. Other Open Cup games, even in subsequent years, we all got the all-inclusive seats to an Open Cup game because they were $50 because they weren't confident they could sell. They stopped selling those tickets to future Open Cup games. It's just, as it stands right now, it just doesn't work. And there have been a number of interesting ideas for how to fix the Open Cup. And now it's on U.S. Soccer to fix the Open Cup and do something different. And then when MLS doesn't want to participate in that, then maybe we start having some hard conversations about what requirements are to play soccer in this league or in this country.
Yeah, I'm pro Open Cup. I've always been pro Open Cup. We've talked about the Open Cup over and over and over again, and I'm not all that interested in talking about how to fix it or what's wrong with it, or somebody do we agree with this thing or that thing or whatever. I just feel like I'm just very bored by that conversation at this point because I don't feel like it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Is why I'm bored by it. Now on the professional league standards, there are a lot of people who are trying to play gotcha on that, where they're like, oh, well, actually they can't do this. And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Because anybody can do anything until somebody can stop them from doing it.
Right.
Right. Until somebody both wants to stop them from doing it and has the ability to stop them from doing it. And we don't know why U.S. Soccer decided not to, I guess, strip MLS of its D1 status and sanctioning and prevent Messi from playing in the Copa America this summer. Right. By making him ineligible to play in FIFA competition. We don't know why U.S. Soccer didn't do that. But the fact is, once they're not willing to do that, it becomes a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
And, ultimately any rule is just, I'm trying to think back to what's it, the Pareto optimum? Is that it where you just, no, that's not, but what's the rule where it's just it doesn't really matter where you set property rights because people will just negotiate the optimal outcome. So all that matters is that you set a rule in the first place.
Right. They also do this theory with how they set sidewalks out.
Coast theorem. People will just negotiate to whatever is the most valuable thing. Right. So
right.
The professional league standards, it's just a default, and NASL wasn't powerful enough to negotiate around them.
All right.
And MLS
is.
And yeah. That's not a value statement. It's just a statement of where things stand. I'm very hopeful that we'll see every team participating in the Open Cup in the future, but this will become, I'm sure this conversation will become interesting again. It's just not interesting to me right now.
Yeah.
So that's all I got to say about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm interested in, though, is I'm putting a pin in this. When those first rounds start up, when the USL teams, I'm going to be right there looking for photos, see how many people are showing up at these games, because there's a lot of people crying about what happened that don't buy tickets to watch the Open Cup. So if you want to prove me wrong, and I know that that's high in the minds of a lot of people, given how powerful and mighty our 14-person listener base is, maybe turn up and watch these games and actually buy a ticket to watch them, because a lot of y'all don't.
It is
in the lower leagues.
It is very frustrating that the loudest voices always seem to come from people that don't actually support a team in the United States. Like they're just sort of vague, nebulous supporters of soccer in the U.S. And then you click on their bio and they're a Dortmund fan. You're like, cool, you're actually everything that's wrong with this sport in this country. So thanks for contributing here. I just I keep coming back to this idea, and apparently I forget who reported this. Maybe it was Carlisle, maybe Bushnell over at Yahoo, who has been great on this topic, by the way.
I think he is one of the best reporters in American soccer.
Yes, and I don't know why he's at Yahoo.
But I have no idea why he's at Yahoo. We should have him. We should try it. We should reach out to him and try to have him on. And I'm serious about that because the depth of his articles is rarely matched by anybody else, and he doesn't seem like somebody who's just an insider or just a crank with an agenda.
Right.
No. He very much feels like a guy that has independent money to where this is something I can do and I don't need to worry how many page clicks it generates because I'm satisfied with the quality of my own work.
Maybe that's why he's at Yahoo.
Right.
It's don't give me a platform.
Maybe he's just I can do good journalism here and I have no pressure.
Maybe he had points in Yahoo.
No gods, no masters. Yeah.
So he when they sold out, he got stock options or something. And now it's you know what? I'm just going to stick around and write about the soccer stuff that matters to me.
Yeah. We'll look at his resume and he was the senior engineer or something behind the tech. But no, again, it was either him or Carlisle or somebody at The Athletic mentioned that MLS and U.S. Soccer both had an eye to the Super League ruling by the European courts recently about how they were going to handle the situation. And that ruling came out after MLS sort of made their first play of only sending the reserve teams, again, in blatant violation of those league standards, to where the resolution is today. And it's ultimately the battle lines. I mentioned this on the last podcast as well, but this is where it comes down to, which is U.S. Soccer is supposed to be a regulatory body. They're supposed to be, for all intents and purposes, the government. And yet they are also, as a soccer property with the Open Cup, a competitor to MLS and USL for that matter. And so they have the regulatory authority to compel these teams, to force these teams to play in their competition at the hypothetical expense of their own competitions that they actually, are in the business for. It's a very weird situation and dynamic to see play out. And we saw it with the Super League with the Barcelonas and Real Madrids of the world looking at UEFA going, hey, you need us more than we need you. And, you can't tell us where to play our games. I think it's fascinating. And this is not done yet.
So here's something that is interesting. And I don't want to get too into detail on this.
Yeah,
because I'm not an expert on this.
No,
but
none of us are.
Right. But there's that relevant sports lawsuit is ongoing about whether U.S. soccer has the ability to prevent non-U.S. leagues from having competitive games in the United States.
Right.
And one of the issues with that is the United States Soccer Federation under, I think it's called the Amateur Sports Act. I think it was drafted by like Ted Stevens, the guy from Alaska who called the internet a series of tubes.
Yes.
Very famously.
If you're from Alaska, everything looks like a pipeline.
They have the ability under U.S. law to govern amateur soccer for like basically for Olympic purposes. There's an old case like 20 years ago about whether that act also gave them the ability to govern professional soccer in the U.S. And the answer to that was no.
Interesting.
So what they rely on is the grant from FIFA.
Right.
To like basically control eligibility to participate in FIFA competitions, the World Cup.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where US soccer gets the ability to institute like professional league standards. Is if you don't comply with that, then you can be excluded from FIFA competition. The problem with that is that like, and I think this is kind of what happened in Europe as well, although I did not read that decision, so I just read like a summary. Is that when you're just like a market actor, you're messing around with antitrust law, and now you're trying to make market restrictions.
Right.
So, and you don't have a act of Congress like the Amateur Sports Act to fall back on for your authority.
Right.
And so there's some unsettled elements to all of this, certainly.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be done talking about this there.
Yeah. Yep. What would be helpful in this case too is if the NASL lawsuit with US Soccer would ever have a resolution. I think within that would be a lot of answers to a lot of these questions as well. So that takes us to our next topic, which is the referee situation. And Grace, I know you just got done trying your hardest not to be an expert on this, but I think we're going to lean on you here a little bit.
I also want to say, like, I don't claim to be an expert in anything.
Right. Fair enough.
I only want to say stuff, and I want to be clear about this. I only want to say stuff that people can check. Okay?
No, like, if I'm saying it, it's the God's honest truth.
At most, I am somebody who Googled something before you did. That's all this is.
That's just what life is. It's somebody who read the book before you.
Yeah. The correctness is the enemy of the heat of the take. That's not what we were striving for here.
God, you know what? I strive to only say things that are just for some reason inexplicably ungoogleable.
This is all parody. Fucking Jonathan Tannenwald.
Yes.
Was talking about, like, on Twitter to you. He was like, I went through your website. I was looking for your reporting. And I'm like, man,
that's the wrong thing to do.
You shouldn't have done that. Yeah. I could have told you not to do that.
Right.
I don't even think we have a search function. So, man, that's a lot of clicking.
Reporting. We all have day jobs, sir.
Also,
much like the referees.
Also, if he really went our website, he would know that he should stop talking about, like, there being socialism in MLS. But that's... Yeah. I'm not going to go down that tangent.
Come on. So we are no closer to, as far as I can tell, a resolution to the lockout. There were some midweek meetings between PRO and the PSRA. I don't know if MLS was formally invited to those. I don't know exactly how that works.
Is kind of a silent participant in the thing, because they don't. The entire purpose of... And I am speculating here.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is right, but you could disagree. I don't care. The entire purpose of PRO is that MLS is not the employer. It's to make MLS not the employer of the referees. That's the entire purpose of PRO. I mean, their offices are in MLS offices.
Right.
Like they're funded by MLS and US Soccer.
They share a printer, right? Like,
yeah.
It's for all intents and purposes one of the same, but legally we got to separate these out. But it does not sound like we are any closer. PRO and by extension MLS seems pretty happy with the quality of refereeing that they're seeing, and essentially said to the PSRA that it should probably get around to accepting some of these offers that are on the table. Otherwise, they can't guarantee they'll have as good of offers in the future.
No, they said that it would get worse, which is absolutely illegal.
Is that illegal?
I think the deadline is March 11th, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's so the deadline they set.
It's not illegal per se.
Okay.
But look, it all depends on what your definition of worse is. I feel like saying that kind of gives up the game a little bit. Like, the mob doesn't go around saying, if you do not pay us money, we will burn your business down. What they say is, boy, it would be sure unfortunate if, your fire protection money didn't get paid, because when fires happen, and they're very regular in this type of building that you own, you certainly want to make sure that you're taken care of. Not saying that a fire will happen. We can't say that. But you have to insinuate around what's going on. Like, there are all sorts of ways the next offer could be legally permissible and worse, but you're not allowed to say, okay, well, now that you didn't take this offer, now it's as much fun as it would be. You can't say now it's half pay from the last time, take it or leave it. It's called regressive bargaining. And they tend to frown on that.
So Piero might have stepped in it with that one. But the memo around the league saying that they're happy with how the league or the referees have been. They did tell, as we previously mentioned, the commentary teams to maybe lay off of the topic for a little bit. Not necessarily to say don't harp on the calls, but just to not bring up the bargaining so much or the lockout so much. And then I did see this. It was in was it SB Nation or one of these outlets where the article was then immediately retweeted by two heads of MLS communications.
Yeah, I think it was SB Nation.
Where they said...
I did not read that article.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It seemed like it was not worth my time, to be honest.
I think the headline was literally like, fans can't tell the difference between these refs and the others. So, yeah, it was very clear what they were trying to do here.
But also very much Pravda.
You can't, it's like finding a burner where you go back and find the first follow, right? The first follow is almost always that person's account. It's so easy.
Right. So, I'm going to put this out there. And please. I feel like, am I allowed to speak on behalf of the two of you? I'm just going to take your silence as a yes right now.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Well, depends what you say.
I'm just announcing to anyone at MLS, if you want to come on the postcast and you are an MLS league official, we will absolutely simp for the replacement officials. We will toe the company line. We will engage in all your propaganda if it can mean a regular supply of information from the league offices that we can use to scoop Tom Bogert.
Okay, here's the other thing. Okay. I have been kicking around in my head writing an article on this, and I still might.
We don't write articles at the Post.
But look, leak us the Miazga tape.
Yes.
Look, the entire incident was used as a situation for PSRA to get leverage in negotiations.
Yes.
PSRA embarrassed themselves over the whole thing. They told probably pretty clear falsehoods about it, which is why people are now just like, well, do you think he went in the locker room or not? Well, if it only mattered that he went to the locker room or not, why did they need to talk up the situation and claim about, it being like a danger to their physical persons or whatever? If it supported
your story, why is the tape not out?
If all that mattered was that he went in the locker room, they wouldn't have needed to lie about what he did while he was there. Okay. But if the details of that situation matter, then those details should come out. And it would be a great time to expose the PSRA as a purveyor of untruths. And what better way to do that than leaking us the postcast? The first, let's say, mainstream legitimate media outlet to obtain a copy of the pro collective bargaining agreement that just expired, give us the tape. We won't even publish it if you don't want to. It'll be like the P tape. We'll have somebody watch it
and then
describe what happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Or we'll play it in reverse, like invert the image like they do on TikTok so you don't get sued for copyright. We'll do that too.
Yeah.
Ooh,
so
that's good.
All I'm saying is let us have the Miazga tape.
We will absolutely spin this story.
We will end this.
Yeah.
We will end this entire situation.
We will spin this story as an unethical bargaining unit attempting to refuse solidarity with other labor in the league as a negotiation tactic. We'll expose these fuckers.
I put this on Twitter, and this sounds like a troll, and it is, but I also agree with it. Is that MLS Media was quick to take the PSRA's side over Miazga and the MLSPA side in the fall because they, as college-educated professionals, professional managerial class types, let's say.
Yep.
First soccer podcast in the U.S. to use professional managerial class. I'll declare that as well.
Send this link to your friends, kids. You're not finding this kind of content elsewhere in the soccer space.
Because they relate to the membership of the PSRA more than they relate to like genuinely talented but undereducated, by and large, immigrant, by and large, members of the MLSPA.
Yep. Simpletons, just working out all day, not so much working with their hands, but working with their feet.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not unrelated to the labor discourse in the United States as it stands. So,
and
yeah, I think that it's like false class solidarity. I mean, it is class solidarity, but it's like professional managerial class solidarity.
Right. It's petty bourgeoisie stuff. Let's be clear here. This is not the unwashed masses as the side gig earning $130,000 a year as a center ref.
Oh, by the way, so I saw, speaking of this, another way of coming at this, let's say flank them from the left. Okay.
Yes.
So Manikowski, I mentioned earlier, went on some podcast with Adam Ruins Everything, Adam Conover.
Yeah.
Okay. And Adam Conover was talking all podcast about how he's like a supporter of organized labor and it's important to support organized labor. You can find podcasts with the same guy talking about how bad police unions are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once you agree that not all unions are good, it becomes about what the union is doing. And that's all we've been trying to do, is say, is this union actually an actor that is advancing the cause of labor? Do we agree with their specific actions? That's all we've been trying to do. But people are trying to shut down the conversation by saying like, oh, you have to support labor. You have to support every union, no matter what they do, which means... which has terrible things. And I know what. One more thing to say.
Go for it.
So Manikowski talked about on that podcast about how they want to be paid in line with like the growth of MLS.
Yeah.
Okay. And the PSRA has talked a lot about the growth of salaries in Major League Soccer, and they've cited like the increase in the salary budget and everything. And I do want to say, like, do they really want to be paid in line with MLS's salary within the broader professional soccer landscape? Okay.
Talk to me.
And I looked
I would
at
like
this,
to know more.
And there's a lot of different information about like what referees make in the Premier League. Okay. And you can find estimates that are based on like base salary plus whatever they make. And I would say that there's a range of, it would be fair to say, between $100,000 and $300,000 a year for a Premier League referee. The average salary in the Premier League, from what I found, is about $4.7 million a year. The average salary in Major League Soccer is about $500,000 a year.
Oof.
So if you were to do the ratio of like what a referee in the Premier League makes versus what a player in the Premier League makes.
Oh dear.
And then transpose that over to Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer officials will be making between $10,000 and $30,000 a year. Oof. So they're making proportionally like 4, 5 on the high end, on that low estimate, 10 to 15 times proportionally what Premier League referees make, compared to what players in the Premier League are paid. And I don't think that, like, generally supporting organized labor means that we need to necessarily think that by merely demanding whatever they demand, the PSRA must be given it.
Right.
Because it does seem like they're asking for like the total spend of pro to be close to doubled.
Right.
Right.
Like there is no there's no room for nuance in this debate. Like there is no room for the idea of, I agree that, I support organized labor. I support the PSRA. I also think they were fairly compensated before all this started. They continue to be fairly compensated. And that the offer that MLS made keeps them fairly compensated for what amounts to a part-time job, a job where,
go ahead.
Like
Sorry.
I was going to say, like a job where you're working at most 120 days a year. If you are officiating 40 matches in MLS a year, which would mean you are basically officiating every match day in MLS, plus working some of the playoffs, and even factoring in a travel day before and a travel day after, for 120 days a year, you're doing okay. But the idea that you have to say, well, because the union wants more money, the union should get what it's demanding, that's absurd. That it robs this conversation of any real honesty, because a real honest conversation would be, what does someone deserve to make for a part-time job in a league like MLS? And the answer probably is whatever it takes to stop them from taking money to fix a match. And not $1 more.
So, and to add to that, it's called collective bargaining, right?
Not collective demanding.
And if the situation was like pro was trying to prevent them, like they did with Pro 2. Right. Trying to prevent them from organizing and forming a union in the first place, this would be a very easy question.
Right.
Right. At least for me. Like, I would say, like, absolutely, they have the right to form a union.
Right.
But all a union does is give you the ability to pool collectively and try to, like, match the employer's bargaining power. At least versus, like, them being able to play individual employees off of each other.
Right.
It does not require the employer to agree to any demand, and it doesn't like give you the ability to force any particular kind of demand. So what I would like to see is a better argument for why they deserve, like, what was it, like 77%? I'm sorry if that number's wrong. I think it's just right. Why they deserve like 77% compensation increases, and why MLS, needs to agree to that versus its other options.
Right. Or business class flights on every flight, right?
Yeah, right. I don't give a shit about that. I'm sorry. You can fly Comfort Plus or main cabin.
These people all have medallion status, I'm sure. They all get the upgrade as soon as they book. Come on. This is nonsense. The only other thing I want to add on this before we can move on to the next topic is I want everybody to keep your eye on people. I don't want you to go after these people personally, because that's of course not. But these reporters like Tannenwald, where they now have a hard on for every mistake a ref is making. And we're getting clips tweeted of this call being blown or that, or nonsense like someone's going to get hurt or something's like, calm down. Or keep that same energy up when the PSRA refs return to work, which they will at some point this year. I bet you won't. I bet that we will be back to these refs are descending from Mount Olympus to pass judgment, and how dare you question anything they do, and what a hard job officiating is. It's amazing how officiating is a hard job disappears as an excuse the minute you have a story you want to tell or you've picked a side as to who's correct in a debate. But just keep I will plan, if I remember, to keep pointing out, when these people suddenly stop caring about officiating in MLS being consistent and good.
Yeah,
and I'll say this.
My favorite part.
I thought Pro had was pretty close to as much pretty close to as much transparency as is right for ref decisions, because they have the inside video review show.
Right.
They do the other thing where even if they don't cover a video review in the video, they have a written explanation for why everything is done.
Right.
I would like a little bit more about the kind of non-video review decisions. Honestly, ultimately, it would be awesome if they just published the ref points scorecards.
Yes.
That they did, even if not during the season, at the end of every season. I know the PSRA doesn't want that, but I will say, if you are asking people to nitpick every single call made by replacement officials, then maybe you should invite the same scrutiny yourself. And that's it.
Yeah. And to the fine folks who are trolling through replacement referees' Facebook pages to find photos of them in various team jerseys, I just hope that we're going to extend that same pleasure to the PSRA referees, because God forbid somebody was a fan of a team or wore a jersey.
The guy wasn't even a fan of Miami. He was a fan of Messi, right? Which I think should also disqualify him from reffing the game. But he was with people, a guy with an Argentina jersey and two people with Barcelona jerseys. Clearly they're all dressed in Messi jerseys.
Right. And
I don't know when that picture was from. Regardless, I don't think he should have been able to ref the Miami-Orlando game, and he didn't.
Right. But, I mean, look, if somebody is going to be photographed in a Manchester City uniform when they're 18 years old and have a U.S. soccer referee license, does that instantly ban them from New York City FC matches for the rest of their life? I'm very curious about that.
I mean, the PSRA has been putting out videos about how they're the biggest fans of the game. You know, well then, who are you guys fans of?
Right.
Let us know.
I mean, I don't want to, reveal too much, but you can go to a certain famous husband and wife refereeing duo, and the wife has photos of her in what appears to be the American Outlaws section of games on Facebook. I don't know if she's ever refereed a U.S. women's game. I assume she hasn't. I don't think they let you do that, but does she have a favorite player on that team? Is she wearing a particular jersey in that one? It makes you wonder how much of the scrutiny is allowed to be directed at the untouchables here. The only other topic I had, and I don't really want to touch on it too much, is just that Miami's preseason might not have been indicative as to how good they're going to be. That Orlando game did not go the way that I was hoping. And I am now having to this is my own personal thing, just having to face the realization that they may in fact be the best team MLS has ever seen.
They'll be fine until, time catches up with the fact that they are an old team. And I think Grayson's right. They can be had through the middle. And if you can make them start running and start defending, I think that team may have some problems. And if they can stay healthy all year, they're probably going to win MLS Cup. They're probably going to win Supporters Shield. I would not bet on Luis Suarez being able to stay healthy an entire season. They now have a gaping hole at right back, so that'll be interesting to see how they address. And your mental health would have been so much better if you would have turned that game off and flipped over to the Real Salt Lake LAFC game, where we were treated to what I can only assume is the European, Euro snob, Euro calendar hardo's dream for what soccer in America should look like, which was Hugo Lloris tending goal in the middle of a whiteout snowstorm as people with snow shovels went to draw the lines around the field so that they could continue to play.
All I could think about with that Salt Lake LAFC game is, man, it must be really nice at Alta right now.
I think most of the fans were with you because there were like 15 people at that game.
I do appreciate Cherundolo whining about it after the game.
He's such a whiner.
As if RSL wasn't playing in the same conditions. And I understand there's like this idea that like they're Real Salt Lake. They're used to this. Their roster is like any other roster in MLS. They're like all South American players.
Yeah. Have you seen Lucho Acosta's photos from training? He's not hardened to the Cincinnati elements. My man's more bundled up than a kid on a snow day when he goes out there to train.
Cherundolo is a whiner. Like we heard this back when they got drummed out of Champions League last year, where he was like, "Oh, you just can't build a roster that competes in MLS." Whereas, like, if you look at his roster, I don't remember who they lost to, but like
Leon, yeah.
But just like a cursor, like their roster was better than the team that beat them. Like,
and Seattle won it the year before. So the excuse is gone.
It's like you have like Carlos Vela, who would walk into like any team in Liga MX. Like, they would love to have him. I don't know. It was dumb. And as to Miami, like, yeah, they're going to look unstoppable some games. They're going to look shitty some games.
Yeah.
We'll see how it all shakes out by the end of the season.
Yeah. Just if Luis Suarez has broken knees and can still score 2 goals, we're all in trouble. So, good times. Well,
is that it?
In honor of DeAndre Yedlin, I think you got to take the you got to sign us off the new way.
Yes. I know, right? Like, did we incept this into becoming reality?
I would say a lot of things are pointing in this direction. All right.
I desperately need Pat Brennan to ask him if he's resentful of the San Diego MLS team. Anyway, on that note, go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. Also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati and, like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.